Hello everyone and welcome to this 3 Colors Up, where we're going to be taking one of the Scion Grenadier platoon infantry bases for the Imperium faction for Armoured Clash and giving it a good little paint scheme. Something nice and simple, something reminiscent of the box art, just with a couple of changes that just brighten the contrast up a little bit. So hopefully going to be nice and easy to follow and make sure that your Imperium faction is painted quickly and looks good on the tabletop. So let's get stuck in. So to get started with the Grenadiers, what I decided to do was I looked at the existing painted miniatures on Wayland or on Warcradle and checked out what they were kind of going for, and I'm aiming for something similar, maybe a little more high contrast in certain places, but largely sticking to the scheme that's already known. So what I plan to do is make the cloth of their uniform stand out a little bit more than just greys and blues and stuff like that. But that said, I am actually going for a blue. So the initial coat is going to be frost blue, and this will be going over this base color. This base color is Army Painter's Ash Grey Spray Primer, and it just has a nice solid grey to it. And you can see over here in the background, I've lost my wet palette. I have no idea where that went, so we're using the top of a Pringles can. And yeah, that'll do. That'll do, because we're only going over each color, twice. So let's take some of this frost blue, and what we're going to do is just basically base in. We can do the entire miniature at this point if you really want to, but so long as we get the torso and other details where the cloth of the uniform is going to be, that's all that needs to be done. So what this is going to do is allow the model to stand out a little bit more by having sort of a bright cloth, but because the rest of the uniform is going to be kind of low contrast, this is still going to stand out as a nice high contrast part of the model, and it helps them stand out once they're all done. So we're just going to go around and give all of the models on the base a good run over with our frost blue. The frost blue is now dry, and you can already see how bright that color is. Now, there's obviously going to be other steps there, but the next thing we're going to do is add the color for our armor, and for that we're going to be using deep gray. This contrasts quite nicely with the lighter bluey gray that we already have, and is going to start building that visual interest, particularly on such a small model. So these guys have a fair amount of body armor on. So they have their helmet. So if I can get up close here and just tie that in. We don't need to be too tidy with this at this stage, because we can just block the colors out, and then before we do a wash, we can then tidy it all up. So if we need to do that, we can. So we have that. He also has, or they also have, sort of gauntlets. Look like they have like a piece that goes over the top of the glove and then a piece that goes around part of the forearm. They're also wearing a bit of an armoured cuirass. So they have a little piece of chest armour. Also be careful with that, because the collar of their tunic comes up past that. So I will need to go in after demonstrating these areas where it all is, and do it a bit more carefully. I also just paint the boots in the deep grey as well. It makes sense to me just to have those, have like maybe a piece of armor plate over the shins, but I just do the whole boot. And then we have little pauldrons, quite small pauldrons on the shoulders. So that's all there is going to be for our deep grey. We're going to go around all the other models now and do that. Make sure it's nice and tidy. And then when we come back, simple case of moving on to our next color. Now with all our armor and stuff done, just get a quick look around. We already see that sort of contrast building up between that lightness of the cloth and the darker shades that are going to be going over the rest of the models. After this, we're now moving on to some skin, and we're going to be using Dorado skin for that. Again, just nice, simple, easy step. We don't have a lot of skin, we basically just have the faces. So just going to be a case of just taking our time and just touching in the skin. Now there is a chin strap on the helmet, and we will be working on that later. But for now, it doesn't matter if we go over that detail, or even, as I've just done, spill onto the dark grey. We can just tidy that up. And a little bit of a cleanup step later on. You can see I've actually made a bigger mess there than I intended to. But we'll get this done, and then we're going to move on to the webbing. With the faces painted in, it's time to move on to our webbing, as I said before. For this, we're going to be using some oak brown. It's a nice sort of reddy brown, and it will help stand out because I've seen the Warcradle Studio paints. I still think, you know, they're a little bit dull, and I think models this size, particularly all ranked up in big formations, need a bit more pop about them. So we're taking the oak brown, and for example, we're going to do the backpack here. There's a couple of little pieces down here that I'm going to call pouches for something. There's a belt, and around the other side we have the shoulder straps, so they come off the top of the backpack and work their way around. Very hard for me to see, so I'm going to be doing those off camera, but that's the areas that I want to do, as well as the chin strap for the helmet as well. I definitely need better magnification or a different setup, so I don't have a camera in front of my face while I'm trying to look at it. But I'll get that all painted in, and we'll see how that looks at the end of that. Afterwards, we're going to start working on, I believe, some metallics. So yeah, we'll push on with the backpacks and so on, and see where we end up. All right, so our webbing is all done. Let's have a look. And you can just see, even though that's quite a dark brown, that stands out really nicely on the cloth, and even with the darker grey on the armour. So looking good so far, happy enough. We're going to move on now with some plate mail metal, and this is going to be largely for our gun. So we're going to put a drop of that down on our Bringle palette, and yeah, we'll just get stuck into it, I think. So it's just going to be a case of, on the gun itself, we're just going to paint the entire thing in the plate mail. Let's get a decent coat of that down. And once that's done, we'll then be shifting gear to another metallic, because this is the only silver on the model is going to be on the gun. Everything else is going to be sort of a coppery kind of color. Just remember to take your time, and if you mess up, you're still at the blocking stage. You can just tidy things up with the other color. I haven't done that yet on this guy here, but you know, we'll get there. With the metal down on our guns, we can now move on to the next metallic, and for that we're going to be using some Evil Chrome. Sort of a brassy, bronzy coppery kind of color. And this is going to be for a couple little details on the guns and the little spike on the top of the helmets. So let's show you what I mean by all of that. So obviously the first one is the spike on top of the helmet. Just a nice bright copper color. And then on the gun, we're taking these two forks, the upper and lower of the muzzle, I guess we could call it. Make sure you get the top of it in there as well, and then around the other side. And then we'll do that little vertical piece and along there. So that just adds another little bit of color, and we're also going to do this little piece here, which is like a sort of a guard kind of shaped thing there. And then because I didn't want too much brown on the model, the butt of the weapon is also going to go that coppery color. Again, it just makes things stand out a little bit more. So we're going to do that to the other four, or the other three of them. Make sure it's all nice and tidy, and then we can move on. With the metallics all done, it's time to give the models a bit of shading, and for that we're just going to use strong tone, and we're going to give the entire models, all of the four figures, a good heavy-ish coat of this. So we're going to be resorting back to our initial brush, a nice bigger base brush, and yeah, we're just going to start to give everybody a coat of this, and maybe add a little bit of water to the brush there because that's a little bit heavy up at the top of that torso. Let it flow a little more. With the wash down and dry, we now have a really nicely shaded and a lot more apparent looking detail on this model, or on this base of models, I should say. So looking good. What I want to do now for the final step before basing is really just sort of bring back some of that color. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to go back to our frost blue, and we're going to start to just tidy up or clean some of those areas as a sort of a kind of a highlight step. So we'll just take our brush, and on some areas where the frost blue is, what we're going to do is just a little bit of a line as a highlight just to bring up that color again. Just like that. Let's see if there's anywhere else there. I'll maybe do this knee. Something like that, a little bit of a line there. Then on the back of that arm. And what we're going to do is apply that to the frost blue and to the deep grey, because the rest should be fine, but those two colours in particular need to be cleaned a little bit more just to bring our contrast back up on the whole base. Once that's done, we're then going to base the miniature with a little bit of basing material, some paint, and maybe a couple of shades or a little bit of a dry brush. But regardless, what you're going to see in after the next swish is this base of miniatures complete. With a little bit of tidy up on the grey and the blue of the uniform, a little bit of basing, a black rim around the base, we now have one of our bases of infantry ready to join the rest of the platoon. And I think, again, for small scale stuff, this looks nice and tidy. I hope I've done it in such a way that it's easily followed. And because you have so much of these, I think you have 12 bases of these in a platoon, it should be able to let you get through them pretty quick. Now, obviously, you can go and change the colors if you feel like it, make it a bit more sort of command and conquer, make your guys a lot brighter and a lot more colorful. But I kind of like this because it's subtle enough that even far away, you can still tell what the models are. If you look at the further out shot and then you compare it to the closer shot, there's still enough detail on these miniatures to shine once you've put a little bit of wash down and it starts to accentuate that shape a little bit. And overall, I think a group of 12 of these with their leader and a nice flag and everything is going to look really good. Anyway, hope you've enjoyed this one. This has been quite a good one to do. I've quite enjoyed these guys. I think I might keep this scheme for my own as well as the house army that we're doing. So, as always, thank you so much for watching. Please leave your comments down below and let me know what you think. And until next time, take care, stay safe, and see you again very soon.
Go ahead and check out our other content on screen now. And while you're at it, why not hit subscribe and remember to ding our dong. Go on, you know you want to click it. Go on.